Welcome back to webinar 3 of our Fueling for High Performance webinar series. Brittany Raftis here, registered dietitian. And in today's webinar, we are focusing on how to build a better smoothie. So we're going to kind of tie in everything that we've talked about in the previous 2 webinars and using a smoothie as an example of how to build a pre or post workout smoothie. So this is going to include the components of a better smoothie, nutrition targets for a pre-workout smoothie, as well as a post-workout smoothie. And then I'll also show you an example of a smoothie recipe that I will demo. So first, focusing on the components of a smoothie. So this is kind of a review of what we've talked about so far, but essentially we want to make sure that we're including a carbohydrate source. So this is going to be our energy source, whether it's pre or post workout. It'll be our energy fuel for our workout or replacing the energy that we've burned in a workout for a recovery smoothie. So typical smoothie options that you can have here are things like frozen fruit, banana, oats, honey, maple syrup, flavored yogurt or milk, which will have some carbohydrate in them as well as some protein. We also want to make sure that we're including some protein ingredients. So common options for smoothies would be milk, Greek yogurt, skim milk powder, which can just add some more concentrated milk protein, nut butters or seed butter or a nut butter alternative like a wow butter, hemp seeds or protein powder. Protein, of course, is what's going to support our muscles, so help to recover our muscles after a workout. And then also before a workout, help to slow digestion a little bit so that we can sustain that energy that we're having in a pre-workout smoothie. Fats will be used in a small amount, usually in these pre or post-workout smoothies, but they're going to be important for aiding in absorbing nutrients, having an overall anti-inflammatory impact, and supporting overall health. So some options for smoothies are things like, again, nut butters or seed butters. Avocado, you can buy avocado frozen, which is a great option for smoothies. Chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp hearts, or even adding some coconut oil or something like that. Next, of course, we need fluid. So this is going to be an important part of helping to blend our smoothie and make it into a smoothie, but also important for hydration. So whether we're using this as a pre or post-workout smoothie, of course, hydration and having that fluid in there is a key component. Some good options for smoothies are water, milk. You could do chocolate or regular milk. Juice will add a real concentrated source of carbohydrate, or milk alternatives like a soy milk will have some protein. You can also use other milk alternatives like almond milk or coconut milk, but keep in mind they won't have the same protein as a traditional milk or soy milk would. So lastly, we want to make sure that we've got some vitamin and minerals in our smoothie, as well as some antioxidants. So we've talked about these components being important, so our micronutrients and antioxidants having those added health benefits and assisting with our overall health and recovery. So some options for smoothies that would be rich in vitamins and minerals, and specifically antioxidants, would be frozen berries, like a mixed berry or blueberry option, mangoes. Dark leafy greens are a great source of antioxidants, as well as lots of essential vitamins and minerals. So you could use spinach, kale. I find that when you blend spinach into a smoothie, you honestly don't even know that it's there. So that's a really great option. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about our nutrition targets for pre and post-workout smoothies. So we're making this as specific as possible just to help to put this all into perspective, but these are just going to be examples, so use this kind of as a guide. So our pre-workout smoothie here, again, our pre-workout needs are going to be based on what you've eaten in general in the last 4 hours. So it's hard to really get too specific with this one. This scenario here would probably be appropriate. Again, it depends on your digestion, but this would likely work well for a smoothie 1 to 2 hours before a workout. So we've got here as our targets, we want to have at least 30 grams of carbs, and I'll show you some scenarios to put this into perspective. We want to have less than 10 grams of protein because that'll slow digestion. So if we're having this an hour to 2 hours before our workout, we don't want too much protein in there. We want to have less than 5 grams of fat, again, because that will slow digestion. So we want to avoid getting too much fats. We also want to have less than 5 grams of fiber because that also will slow digestion and could lead to some cramping and GI symptoms during our workout. So keep in mind, I will be showing quite a few kind of numbers and scenarios and examples here. This might be a good webinar that you could kind of use to pause, screenshot, go back to, just because I know at the first go, these numbers are going to be maybe a little bit confusing at first. And then compare that to a post-workout smoothie. Again, we did use the example in webinar 2 of post-workout needs. So you could use those scenarios with your body weight to calculate something that could be applicable to yourself. We're just going to stick for the purpose of kind of having a common example here. We're going to use this scenario, which would be appropriate for most athletes. So our goal here for nutrition targets for a post-workout smoothie are at least 60 grams of carbs, at least 20 grams of protein, less than 10 grams of fat, and over 5 grams of fiber. So you can see it's a much more nutrient dense smoothie. It's probably going to be a bigger portion. There's going to be more in it just to help to support that recovery. So carbohydrate, we want to make sure that we're getting a good dose to replenish our muscles. Protein, of course, in this recovery phase, we're recovering our muscles. So we need a good dose of protein as well. So more than what we would need pre-workout. Fats, we're still going to keep low, although we don't have to be quite as cautious as pre-workout. The reason why we still want to keep fats a little bit lower is because fats still are slow digesting. And the risk of having something that's really, really high in fat after a workout is that if it's sitting in our stomach for too long, we might miss that hour window or 30-minute window to replenish our muscles. Fiber, we don't have to be as cautious of here because we're not heading into a workout, so we don't have to worry as much about that GI distress. So we can aim for something over 5 grams here. So just to put that into perspective a little bit with food. So a pre-workout smoothie, we've got some mango, banana, orange juice, coconut milk. It's going to be pretty light, not a lot of slow digesting ingredients there because we want that quick energy source before a workout. Again, this could be a 1 to 2 hour option before a workout. Our post-workout smoothie, we've got a lot more ingredients. We've got lots of protein, healthy fats, carbohydrates in there. It's going to be slower digesting and overall kind of a better, well-rounded snack or small meal. So in terms of how to meet your targets, and this is where I think it might be helpful to kind of pause and go back and forth throughout this webinar because we're going to flip through quite a few numbers here. But we had these charts on our webinar too, just to put some of these numbers of nutrients into perspective. So here I've just kind of highlighted options that would be appropriate for a smoothie. So we've got everything here equals 30 grams of carb. So if we think about that initial pre and post workout smoothie, for a pre-workout smoothie, we wanted to aim for over 30 grams of carbs. So we would want to include essentially one of these options. For a post-workout smoothie, we wanted to have at least 60 grams of carbs. So we'd essentially be picking 2 of these options here. In terms of protein, so again, we've got just a couple options for protein that you might be putting into a smoothie, just to put this into perspective. And all of these portions of these foods are equivalent to 25 grams of protein. So these would certainly work for that post-workout smoothie. That target we had was over 20 grams. If this is a pre-workout smoothie, we'd want to include very little portion of these foods, so half or a third of a portion. Just to note here, tofu is something that you can add into a smoothie. You can use the softer tofu and it blends up really nicely in a smoothie. It's a source of calcium and a great protein option aside from protein powder. As I mentioned in webinar 2, when it comes to protein, we do want to rely on whole food sources of protein as much as possible. So if this is a smoothie that you're making at home, for example, you've got the resources, you've got the ingredients at home to make more of a whole food smoothie option. I think that's a great option and it's a great way to go if you can. If you're out and you don't quite have the ability to make maybe a smoothie with whole foods, that's where more of the convenient options like a protein powder can come into play. But again, try and use whole foods as much as you can because they're going to have those added bonus nutrients that we also need. And then for fats, we didn't talk much about fats in terms of numbers in webinar 2, but I just have these here to show an example of, say, what would be 5 grams of fat worth of these foods that we might add to a smoothie. So keeping in mind in our pre-workout smoothie target, we had less than 5 grams. So we wouldn't want to have, one of these servings or less than one. In our post-workout smoothie, we wanted less than 10 grams of fat. So we could pick 1 to 2 of these fat servings to add that to our post-workout smoothie. So things like avocado, peanut butter, sun butter, other nut butters, coconut, hemp seeds, chia seeds, these are all excellent fat sources and also have a lot of great other nutrients in them. All right, so now we're going to get into planning a smoothie. You can screenshot this chart here. It's a good tool that you can use to kind of add up the ingredients and actually plan a full smoothie that fits within these targets that we have here listed on the left side. So again, you can screenshot this or you can use kind of a blank piece of paper. But essentially this is kind of what we would use to list out our ingredients, add up the protein, carbs, fat, and fiber, and really kind of get a sense of what is making up our smoothie and how we can reach these targets in the best way possible. Okay, so I'm sharing a simple smoothie here that I've put together for post-workout. This one will be a little bit different from maybe the typical smoothie. I'm sure you've all tried before a basic smoothie with milk and berries. So I'm gonna put together something a little bit different here. I'm using frozen banana as my carbohydrate. This is a great way to use kind of overripe bananas. You can freeze them in halves or you can slice them and freeze them. I'm gonna add milk to this. So if you're using a cow's milk, it'll also act as a little bit of protein for you as well. I'm also using Greek yogurt. So I'm putting about a half a cup in here, and I suggest using vanilla. I think the flavor will work best. And then next, I'm gonna put in 2 tablespoons of oats. So if you've never added oats to a smoothie, it's a really great option. I definitely suggest trying it. It just adds a little bit more complex carbohydrate into your smoothie, makes it a little bit more filling. Also a teaspoon of chia seeds in there. I'm also gonna add a half a tablespoon of cocoa powder. This actually adds a little bit of antioxidants into the mix and will make this a really nice chocolate banana kind of smoothie flavor, which will be great also. And then lastly, I'm gonna add in a tablespoon of honey. This will be a very concentrated source of carbohydrate. I'll show you the number breakdown in the next portion of the webinar, but this will add some flavor, but also add a very concentrated portion of carbohydrate in that energy source. So now I'm just gonna simply put the lid on, blend this up, and you'll see the final result. So this has a chocolate banana flavor, like I said. You can also add a teaspoon of vanilla if you want, but if you use vanilla yogurt, it kind of has that nice vanilla flavor as well. And I'll just pour it out here, but you'll see it basically has the consistency of like a milkshake. It's pretty thin, pourable, and yeah, it's a really nice option. So give this one a try if you want to try something a little bit different. So here's the breakdown of that smoothie. So we added a full frozen banana, which gives us carbohydrate. The total amount of carbohydrate in here is about 75 grams. So we're basically getting a little bit from each of those ingredients. The carbohydrate I have listed here for Greek yogurt is 5 grams. That would be based on a plain Greek yogurt, but if you use vanilla, like I said, it'll be a little bit higher. The total protein content is about 23 grams. That's coming from both the Greek yogurt and the milk if you're using cow's milk. And then fats are kept pretty low at about 4.5 grams. And that's coming from a 2% milk, some Greek yogurt, chia seeds, and a little bit from the cocoa powder. And like I said, the honey is a really concentrated carbohydrate source. So that 1 tablespoon gives us 15 grams of carbohydrate. So half of the amount that's in the banana. When you think about the volume of 1 tablespoon of honey, it's a very, very, very concentrated carb source. So this can be a good option for anybody who's struggling with low appetite post-workout. It's less volume, so it makes it a little bit easier for you to get those carbs in. Of course, in general, when we're talking about healthy eating, we do want to have whole food sources with fiber and whole fruits. But again, when we're trying to get this nutrition into such a short window of sometimes 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes these little tricks and additions can make a huge difference in helping you meet your needs within those kind of time restraints. So I hope that gives you a good example of how to make a pre or a post-workout smoothie. Again, run through this webinar a couple times, have a look at the numbers, write down some options, maybe write down what your typical smoothie looks like and see how it compares to these numbers. But the purpose of this webinar is a little bit more practical, so to help you to kind of apply these principles into your routine and help you to fuel and recover after workouts. So thanks so much for listening to this webinar series. I hope that you were able to learn something new, and I hope that you have some take-home things that you're going to work to apply to your routine. I do have my email address here. If anybody has any follow-up questions after these webinars, feel free to send me a quick email and I can respond to you that way. Otherwise, thanks again for listening and take care.